Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Guy. So I've been getting some pretty heavy bombshells sent to me via email and some other ways. Obviously, if you are a fan and been watching my program, you're caught up on most of what's going on, and I have lots more to go in the future. Now, we have, you know what? I tried to make this as short as possible in order to give you all the information, and it's a little bit hard to do. But I'm hoping that I did this clip some justice. I'm hoping that I put everything in layman's terms enough for you to understand. And I'm hoping that I have enough information here to show proof, body of evidence, that this is all factual, this is all going down. So now that we know that Justin Trudeau is more than likely going to be charged, if we have a true justice system, which hopefully the Democracy Watch will fight to happen with a lot of real media and journalists and the help of people like myself in spreading the word and getting it out there. This is just another video on more and more of the corruption and how the money from the drugs, from CCP, from BC, all the way to Toronto has infiltrated the political spectrum and our politicians all the way to the top, right to the bottom. Everybody from Parliament, Judiciary, Police, which is our RCMP, CBSA, they have infiltrated every aspect of Canada. So without further ado, let us get started.
The findings are in. The public inquiry on foreign interference has wrapped up, and the report of Madam Justice Hogue is a damning indictment of Justin Trudeau's government. Let's look at some of the key findings. Madam Justice Hogue found that during the 2021 federal election, Beijing directed an anti-conservative campaign that may have materially impacted results in several ridings.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt it for a minute. If you've watched my previous episodes, you know that Hogue is linked in every aspect to not only the Trudeau family, to the Liberal Party, but also the Laurentian elite. This was a kangaroo court, just as every single public inquiry put forward by the Liberal Party is. They are actors working for them in coalition with the media to cover up and hide the facts. And again, in future episodes, you will know, because the evidence is there, that they use our own parliamentary system against us. They will throw national security out there. They will throw cabinet confidence out there. They will throw all of these different little rules and laws in order to hide information. So even though this report came out saying that, the government needs to do more, but they've done wonders. They're glorious. You should be happy to have the Liberals in power. There are certain things that I believe she was forced to write because she knew that the evidence was already out that would have proved her wrong if she didn't. So now, with all of the new evidence coming out, and especially with what I found out today, which I'll be getting to you in future episodes, I will link to one little bit from one of the emails I got. This corruption is starting to become exposed. So now, people are going back, such as Michael Cooper, and using the information given to us at hand from the Liberal regime in order to put proof to not only the allegations and evidence of the past, but to what is happening now.
Madam Justice Hogue further found that Justin Trudeau's government was aware of Beijing's interference activities. And what did Justin Trudeau's government do about it? They did nothing. They turned a blind eye to it and covered it up, failing to inform the public and failing to even inform conservative candidates who were specifically being targeted by the Beijing regime. And it's important to note that Justin Trudeau's government had plenty of warning ahead of the 2021 election about Beijing's interference activities. For example, then Public Safety Minister Bill Blair received 5 CSIS intelligence memos flagged for high importance, warning him that certain conservative MPs were being targeted by Beijing.
And that was the purpose of this note. It was to bring it to the attention of those people who were distant to.
Under Blair's watch, these intelligence memos, again flagged for high importance, went into a black hole and were never acted on.
So, this is what they knew. This is OCCRP, which is the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. Canada's elections targeted by foreign actors. While no details have been released concerning the nature of the threats, Canada's security agencies have warned that attempts to interfere with elections and influence Canadian citizens could be achieved through computer hacking, biased media content, and spy operations. Taheri Mufti, a spokesperson for the Canadian Security Intelligence Services, which is CSIS, told the publications that this is not the first time that outside actors have attempted to undermine the integrity of Canada's democratic institutions and processes. Over the years, CSIS has seen multiple instances of foreign states targeting specific communities here in Canada, both in person and through the use of online campaigns, Mufti said. However, an anonymous government official speaking to the investigators noted that these previous attempts had not been explicitly linked to election meddling. Ahead of the upcoming elections in October, this was in 2019, this article, by the way, Canada's Commission Security Establishment, CSE, has already briefed the major political parties about covert and overt foreign interference activity aimed at Canadian voters. Many of those targeted belong to various diaspora communities who foreign governments view as susceptible to their influence. By briefing the parties, the agency hopes that political campaigns will tighten their internal security procedures. The report also notes that Canada has strained diplomatic relations with several state actors who are not strangers to cyber aggression, including China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity report on cybersecurity threats in 2019 notes it is very likely that Canadian voters will encounter some form of foreign cyber interference related to the 2019 federal election. It does, however, note that this interference will likely not be on the scale of what was seen in the 2016 United States presidential election. Did you catch that? Half of all advanced democracies holding national elections were targeted by cyber threat activities last year. The report claims this is 3 times greater than in 2015, and the Center for Cybersecurity predicts the frequency of attacks to increase.
National security officials testified at the public inquiry that sending written intelligence products to Trudeau's ministers was an ineffective way to convey information because Trudeau's ministers simply didn't read memos right on their desks. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly claimed that she took foreign interference seriously.
And, as Foreign Minister, I take this extremely seriously. We will continue to take this issue seriously, very seriously.
Sure she does.
However, Madam Justice Hogue found that while Joly was aware of foreign interference, she couldn't even be bothered to receive intelligence briefings on specific foreign interference activities. That is, until foreign interference became a political headache for the Liberals. And at that point, Joly was suddenly very conveniently interested in finding out the details. And so...
Let's hear a little bit about the inquiry that he's talking about.
In our next panel, we have Mr. Ward Elcock, former director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And from the Bureau, we have Samuel Cooper, investigative journalist. You will each have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement. And Mr. Cooper, we'll start with you. Welcome to Proc.
Thank you. It's an honor to be called to testify. My name is Sam Cooper, and I am now reporting for my own journalism platform, The Bureau. The Bureau's first 2 stories are relevant to your examination today of information I have reviewed in documents regarding Beijing's, quote, threatening Canada's elected officials to deter criticism, end quote. First, I wish to inform the committee of how I collected knowledge on these matters in the past decade. While covering foreign investment in Vancouver real estate, I started researching foreign interference in...
So, this is the link that got his sniffer going. This money laundering goes further than just drugs, real estate, and local politicians. This goes right to the federal government.
In connection to the public statements of former CSIS Director Richard Fadden in 2010. In September 2014, for the Province newspaper, I authored a story titled, "Is China Influencing BC's Municipal Politicians?" The story, using access to information, examined CSIS documents. In March 2015, for the Province, I authored another story titled, "Chinese Police Run Secret Operations in BC to Hunt Allegedly Corrupt Officials and Laundered Money." I believe these stories provide historical context for this committee. Now to the 2021 federal election. I'll quote from now public information in my June 17th article for the Bureau, an extended interview with MP Aaron O'Toole. In the published interview, I told Mr. O'Toole, quote, "I have reported about this January 2022 Privy Council Office intelligence report sourced from 100 CSIS reports. What the document said is that a small number of MPs in the 2021 election reported concern for their families, their privacy, their reputations, and their re-election chances as a result of targeted CCP activity." Mr. O'Toole answered, quote, "That's very troubling to hear. I'm not surprised because when I was briefed on the examples of intelligence that were shared with me, some of the activities were so intense in the Greater Toronto Area and the Lower Mainland of British Columbia, it would not surprise me if people were followed, tabs kept on people, intimidation, voter suppression." I questioned Mr. O'Toole again, saying, quote, "I learned from sources aware of CSIS investigations in 2021 that CSIS officers found that Chinese officials in Toronto were following one MP during the campaign. They were also allegedly approaching voters in relation to this candidate, and CSIS found this activity, I was told, coordinated and alarming." Mr. O'Toole answered, "Well, that seems to coordinate or correspond completely with the fourth element that I included in my speech in the House of Commons, which is one clear example of voter suppression in a riding in Canada." Finally, I'll quote from the preamble from my interview with Mr. O'Toole in my article. In it, I explained that I personally received a CSIS threat brief in 2021 after my book on Chinese foreign interference in Canada was published. I wrote in my June 17th article for the Bureau, quote, "A CSIS officer met me in Ottawa. I was told that Chinese security agents in Canada are dangerous, and they were tasked to look into my background, study the impact of my book, and to discover my reporting sources." End quote. I believe this information provides important context for the committee that the Chinese Communist Party seeks to influence or intimidate journalists in the same way it seeks to influence or threaten Canadian politicians. Thanks. I look forward to your...
Okay, if you watch my program lots, you know who this is. If not, this is Sam Cooper. Been in journalism for a long time, was a rising star, turned down a huge pay raise and a very large promotion, knowing what he was undertaking, committed full-fledged to it, started his own, left, and has been writing ever since. This guy is probably, in my books, one of the best Canadian journalists we have. He is soon to be one of the best Canadian journalists of all time. And if he keeps up what he's doing, and God help us, he stays alive because his life is in constant danger, will be one of the greatest journalists in the world. They'll write books about him if they aren't already. He has literally being stalked, hacked, doxxed, and worries for his life, and has been told by not only the Canadians, which he said in this, but he later came out because the Americans are also now exposing themselves to what they know and that they've been working with him. They are helping to protect him and warning him that his life is in danger. Now, you know you're good at your job when you have nations, huge countries, that want you gone and want to know all of the people who are spilling the beans so they can get rid of them as well. But you know you are a legend when your own government is either turning a blind eye to it, allowing it to happen, or maybe even in their own way helping for it to happen. I'm going to read you something. So, this is an email I got. I'm going to read you a little bit of it. I don't want to read the whole thing because there's a lot in here that I have to work on yet and that I don't want anybody else seeing. A leaked 2014 intelligence document from Canadian Security Intelligence Services warned that China was orchestrating a broad strategy to cultivate Canadian politicians at every level ahead of various elections, relying on community leaders and intermediaries. The classified CSIS report, marked secret Canadian eyes only, details how Chinese embassy officials in Ottawa tasked diaspora figures to target specific Canadian politicians, including a sitting senator and a member of parliament, inviting them to high-profile Chinese New Year banquet in 2015. Canadian security officials have long voiced concern over foreign interference, but this document makes clear that shortly after President Xi Jinping rose to power, Beijing began laying the groundwork from its embassy near Parliament Hill to scale its influence in Canada. Tactics included mass invitations to elected officials and calculated pressure campaigns, but unlike other leaked intelligence reviewed by the Bureau, which focused on Chinese election interference in Vancouver and Toronto, this document centers on Ottawa, Canada's seat of federal power and home to its elitist bureaucrats. There is now a new strategy to invite as many city, provincial, and federal politicians as possible in the run-up to various elections to make a lot of noise and submit demands to those politicians in exchange for community support, the document warns. CSIS noted no further information on the event to which the politicians would be invited. Now, this goes on and on and on and on. Like I said, there's lots in there that I have to deal with. Let's continue.
As bad as that is, it's even worse, because we know that during the 2019 election campaign, Justin Trudeau was briefed that one of his candidates had received the assistance of the Beijing regime to help him secure a Liberal Party nomination. With that information, Justin Trudeau did absolutely nothing. He allowed that candidate to stand and get elected as a member of Parliament. Madam Justice Ho concluded that the reason Justin Trudeau did nothing with that information and failed to act is because Justin Trudeau was concerned about electoral consequences. In other words, Madam Justice Ho found that Justin Trudeau put his interests and the partisan interests of the Liberal Party ahead of countering Beijing's interference in our democracy. And it appears that Bill Blair did much the same, because Bill Blair sat on a CSIS warrant to investigate a top Liberal and former Liberal cabinet minister for 54 days. This type of warrant is typically signed off by the minister in a matter of days. But when it came to this top Liberal, Bill Blair sat on it for 54 long days. And Madam Justice Hogue found that there was no reasonable explanation for this highly unusual delay, and she even heard evidence that Minister Blair's office may have interfered in the warrant process. It's obvious what happened here. Minister Blair's office ran interference to protect a top Liberal from a national security investigation. And so here's the bottom line. Justin Trudeau's government turned a blind eye to Beijing's interference when it was convenient for them to do so, particularly when such interference targeted conservatives and therefore helped the Liberals. And even worse, Justin Trudeau's government went out of their way to protect top Liberals and put partisan interests of the Liberal Party first, national security be damned. So yes, the findings of Madam Justice Hogue's report are in, and they are a damning indictment of Justin Trudeau's government.
And I recognize that, but the Prime Minister, in response to your reporting, has repeatedly claimed that he never was briefed about, quote, candidates receiving money from China. Now, it's my observation that that statement is very, very carefully crafted and deliberate, because it seems to me to be unlikely that Beijing would simply transfer funds directly to a candidate, that the scheme would be significantly more elaborate than that. So based upon the intelligence that you reviewed, did Beijing indirectly fund candidates in the 2019 election through this clandestine network?
I'll, before answering your question, refer back to, I know the members paid close attention to the speech of MP Aaron O'Toole, and on his CSIS threat briefing, he spoke of, from my recollection, concrete funding of a misinformation product through the United Front Work Department directed from Beijing, so that funds are paid in Canada, my understanding of his speech, which funds a misinformation product.
So, who is he talking about? Well, this is the United Front system of workers, led by United Front Work Departments of Chinese Communist Party committees at each echelon in government. The United Front system is a complex and opaque set of organizations designed to advance the CCP's influence in industry and civil society. Within China, the United Front system has several responsibilities, which range from repressing ethnic minorities in Tibet and Xinjiang to grooming members of China's minor political parties to take up positions in government. But in addition to its extensive activities inside the country, the United Front system acts as a liaison and amplifier for many other official and unofficial Chinese organizations engaged in shaping international public opinion of China, monitoring and reporting on all the activities of the Chinese diaspora, and serving as access points for foreign technology transfer. So,
essentially, from my understanding of his speech, to attack Mr. O'Toole's reputation. So I think it's fair to say that conversely, I've explained in a number of interviews about my reporting, Beijing uses carrots and sticks. So if we were talking about the concrete funding of a misinformation product, a stick to attack a member of parliament, it is very reasonable, and according to sources with awareness of the investigations, to understand that the consulate is also directing funds into an election interference network comprised of many different types of individuals, comprised of what I understand and have read in a Privy Council Office intelligence assessment, media entities that are controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. So with regards to your question, right? Did Beijing fund candidates? It's my understanding they funded a network which is directed to support Beijing's preferred candidates. And as Member O'Toole told me in my interview for the first story, he wasn't going to speak to the exact methods of transfer. I don't know that CSIS has visibility on exchanges, physical exchanges, wire transfers. Perhaps, Mr. Elcock, technology has advanced, but I can tell you that CSIS has and studies FinTrack records, and that can, I believe and I understand that FinTrack records will provide revelations on direct methods of transfer and where money went.
Okay. Now, we've come full circle. So he's back to the money. And that's what's got him into Ottawa and election interference. So he's in BC. He's studying how all of these money laundering operations, where they're getting their money from, where the backing's coming from, how they're laundering it, what purchases, what people are involved. And while he's doing this and he's finding billions of dollars, he stumbles upon the fact that there are politicians that are involved in this, wittingly or not wittingly. Right. In the meantime of putting this case together, he stumbles upon large, vast amounts of money. We're not talking hundreds of millions, we're talking billions of dollars that is going to Ottawa to buy parliament and favor within the government. So, this is the OCCRP. We dealt with them earlier in the show. Following a trail of tainted money from China into Vancouver real estate. Before moving from China to Canada in 2006, Chen Runkai told immigration officials that he made at most 41,000 Canadian dollars a year. His wife, he said, was employed as a clerk. Despite their modest incomes, a series of money transfers poured in 114 million into the Chen family's Canadian bank accounts a few years later. Chen, it turns out, is wanted for arrest by the Chinese government and charges of bribery for his alleged role in a major corruption scandal involving a senior military official. OCCRP and the Toronto Star have learned. Now, he's fighting to stay in Canada, where his family has 2 mansions in Vancouver overlooking the Pacific. He is the owner of a Tudor-style home with the mountain and ocean views he purchased in 2016 for $15.6 million. It sits a few doors down from another mansion his daughter purchased in 2012 for about $14 million without a mortgage when she was 25, while listing her occupation as a student. Until now, Chen has been unknown to the public and referred to only as Person A in a case study by a British Columbia commission tasked with examining overseas money laundering in the province and its links to surging property prices. Now, it goes on and on and on and on. Here's the gist of it. The Chinese government found out that there were people who were onto him and going to blow the whistle on this money laundering. So they wanted to nab him and get him the hell out of the country to stop any repercussions and snuff the story before it took off. He ran. While on the run, the government finds him, finds out he's wanted by the Chinese. Now he doesn't want to go back because he knows he's going to get iced because he got caught and China wants him back. And he doesn't want to say anything here in Canada because chances are he probably won't live that long in jail anyways. So he's really caught between a rock and a hard place. He doesn't want to talk because he doesn't want to incriminate himself and end up in jail here, but he doesn't want to go back to China because he knows he screwed up and China doesn't tolerate that. Moving on to another article. Canada ill-equipped in fight against money laundering. 3 years investigation into money laundering within Canada's British Columbia revealed that the provincial and federal authorities are ill-equipped to prevent the proceeds of crime from infiltrating the province's economy. The Cullen Commission, an 1,800-page report written by Commissioner and former BC Supreme Court Justice Austin Callan, was drafted following the significant public concern about money laundering in the province. Cullen's task was to evaluate the extent to which the money laundering had infested various sectors of British Columbia's economy, as well as evaluate the effectiveness of regulatory and law enforcement agencies in their anti-money laundering efforts. Now, the Trump administration has put this forward on many occasions on the public, easy to find, that isn't censored, where they say there is money laundering issues in Canada. You are ill-equipped, you don't have the rules and regulations. That is why the entire government, the entire system has been infiltrated by China. And who's the one, the worst country in Trump's book? China. It's China. That's who. It irks him. And not just him, and not just the Republicans, But the Democrats, they have been warning, but they've been talking to deaf ears and blind eyes, because whatever they're telling to their officials in Canada is either A, not making it to the top seat, or B, making it there and either being swept off the desk, read and pretending it wasn't so they could say, oh, well, I didn't read it, so I'm not responsible, or they're actually not doing it on purpose, which all the evidence is showing. Cullen's task was to evaluate the extent to which money laundering had infested, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, okay. What he concluded was that an enormous volume of illicit funds is laundered through the British Columbia economy every year. The commissioner cited a model which indicated that $6.3 billion Canadian, or 4.8 billion American, had been laundered through the province in 2015 that they knew of, with an additional 7.4 billion Canadian, or 5.7 billion American, laundered in 2018 that they know of. And the hardest part about reading that is, as a Canadian, knowing 10 years ago, those two numbers would have been the same because our dollar was actually valuable. It wasn't the peso it is today. Now, again, article goes on and on. I post all of these links so you guys can check everything I'm doing for proofreading, or just so that you can actually read the whole article and you guys will be able to actually bank on more information that I can't pack into a very short video. So I urge you, click on the links, search it out, and read a lot of this because it's quite information. And it's funny how all of a sudden there's little lights that start shining going, wait a minute, didn't Alias just talk about, oh, interesting. So where does this video come full circle? Well, I'm going to take you back in time. Just before Sam Cooper came to Ottawa, there were certain things that were going, where's this money getting to? How's it getting there? And why is it leaving the province to Ottawa? So he comes to Ottawa and starts investigating. And he finds out, of course, a pile of stuff. But this is very interesting. Revealed. Justin Trudeau's close advisor helped move huge sums offshore. Now, I don't know if many of you remember this. I know I sure do. There's still hidden people in all of these different documents. Someday, if we have a real government, they will actually spend the time, and I don't mind the taxpayers' dollars, and get some men down in these countries and audit these books, or start fining organizations and banks that are allowing this corruption to happen. Stephen Bronfman, who played key role in Canadian Prime Minister's rise, was involved in complex offshore web, leaked papers show. The chief fundraiser and senior advisor to the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who played a critical role in the rise of power of the charismatic politician, was involved in a movement of millions of dollars to offshore havens. The Paradise Papers revealed. That's one set. There's also the Panama Papers, the Cayman Island Papers. There's a whole bunch. Moving on. Stephen Bronfman, heir to the Seagram fortune, who was instrumental in Trudeau's successful bid for the leadership of the Canadian Liberal Party in 2013, and the premiership 2 years later, engaged through his family investment business in a complex web of entities in the U.S., Israel, and the Cayman Islands. Multi-million-dollar cash flows between the three jurisdictions might legally have avoided taxes in the U.S., Canada, and Israel. The leaked documents unveil a close relationship between two wealthy families who collaborated to shift millions of dollars to the Cayman Islands. On the one side were the Bronfman family, inheritors of the Seagram distillery fortune in, drumroll, Montreal. These are the Laurentians. These are the Laurentian elites. On the other side was the Cayman Islands-based trust of Leo Colbert and former Canadian senator and powerhouse within the Liberal Party, Trudeau now leads. Accountants working for the families discussed the possibilities of recasting interest owed by the Colbert to the two U.S.-based Bronfman funds, blah, 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 blah. And to be honest, I could read you a lot more of this. It'll just kill time. I will post the link, like I said. But in the end, what I am getting to is this. we've come full circle. There is enough evidence that Justin will be charged. There is enough evidence showing the incompetence and involvement of the RCMP. There is enough evidence, and from it sounds like even whistleblowers who just don't want to give up their identities, want protection, who will start to include a lot of the judiciary and other insiders, rich families and companies involved. It leads and ties in every which way to foreign entities' involvement and corruption, as well as how they're using the complete destruction of society to get what they want via the drug trade. And let the media keep telling you how we have nothing to do with fentanyl in the States. We're not even a hair on a dog compared to Mexico. That is a blatant lie. As far as the world is concerned, we are the largest distributor of fentanyl on the planet. It is infiltrating all of these other nations. They are all aware of where it's coming from. And we are one of the 5 top money laundering companies in the world. All of this dominoed out of control once China seized power of Canada in the election of Justin Trudeau. So, fingers crossed that Democracy Watch gets what all Canadians deserve, which would be a fair trial with full transparency, not liberal transparency, because that's a fake word. Liberal transparency means brick wall, throw you in a dungeon. You're not getting any information. I mean real sunlight, real transparency. We need to know everything, and they can start with the names of every single MP or person that they know of that is involved wittingly or unwittingly in corruption or foreign interference. That is what I believe. Let me know how you feel in the comments. But until next time, you have been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I am your host, alias Tagai. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification key or bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, good night.